one generation. We have seen our Gulf country cousins do the same thing, 30 years, 40 years. Not as blessed as we are. So what is your blueprint, your economic blueprint for this nation of ours?
Okay, good afternoon, and first I want to thank you for the invitation. Let me start by saying that the outcome for what we want is transformation, and that is what the topic talks about, and that is economic transformation. Now there is a link between economic transformation and radical growth that is in the topic. But economics is not actually called radical growth, it's called sustained growth. And Nigeria has experienced sustained growth between 2004 to 2014, about 10 years, but the outcomes are still not desirable. So that takes me to talk about if growth is a prerequisite for economic transformation, but the kind of growth we have is not bringing the kind of economic transformation that we are having, then what then is the issue? And that will lead me to talking about the solutions that you're talking about. Now, in economics, growth is actually the accumulation of factors of production and the productivities of these factors. That implies that if Nigeria economy is growing as recorded, but unemployment issues are not addressed, poverty issues are not addressed, it means that the drivers and the sectors that drive those growth don't have the employment elasticities. For instance, like being at one of these sectors that we have, right? The other side of my definition is productivities of factors of production. Factors of production must be very productive, whether it is labor, whether it is capital. Now, one of the major problems we have in Nigeria is that our factors of production are not productive. We have built a structure where a system that what I call that is built on sharing the national cake instead of building the national cake, and that is where productivity comes in, right? And that takes me to talking about what are the major drivers of productivity that any government that is coming on board should look up to. Number one, and that will trace me back to what Prof has discussed today. Number one driver of productivity in anywhere in the world is institution. Institution has link with growth, institution has link with innovation, institution has link with productivity. So the number one on the ladder of productivity driver is institution. And there are about five components of institution. Number one is rule of law. Today we all agree that rule of law is nowhere to be found in Nigeria. From 1960 to date, we have had about 5 constitutions. Only 1960, 1963 constitutions were drafted in a civil system. Beyond that point, all the constitutions drafted to us were drafted by military system, and military ruled by edicts. And that's why you can see a militarized system that end up with the kind of poverty that we're talking about. So rule of law is very, very critical. There is no nation of this world that want to drive productivity, that want to move forward, and that expect to have economic transformation that plays with rule of law. Number two component of institution that is very critical that this new government must look up to has to do with what I call voice and accountability. We all say that democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people, right? If the people, we are electing leaders who are going to be entrusted with our resources, not just to manage them, but also to generate more resources. That implies that we must be accountable to these people. Currently, Nigeria is rated very low. The third component of institution that we must look into going forward has to do with government effectiveness, and that is where leadership comes in. And what do I mean? In 2021, Nigeria was rated the third worst governed nations of the world. And what was the criteria used? It was based on leadership and foresight. Nigeria was rated very low. The second thing that amounts to that rating was also in the corridor of what we call corruption, right? But I don't want to talk about corruption. Is one thing that is so an issue here. So let me move from the fourth thing that we must look into if we want to drive productivity vis-a-vis to economic transformation. The fourth thing that we must look into has to do with what I call political stability. Now there's a link between rule of law to the governance, because the kind of leadership of human capital you produce is a function of the institution that govern that system. Now if institutions have issues, then you have the character of people that will be a resemblance of the institutions we have. Okay, so that moves me to the second point of what drives productivity, because productivity is the driver of long-run growth and economic transformation. And what is it? Human capital. See, in the ladder of, there's something called the triangle of economic wealth. The first on top is knowledge. Over the weekend, I spoke somewhere in a church setting, and I was trying to tell them that Canaan is a knowledge economy. That God told them that fold your legs. In the desert, you don't need to do it, manna will fall on you. We have a system that is thinking that just manna will come and then will share. And that is where we are killing productivity. We are just at the edge of looking for, if I can create a state for myself, I have access to the national cake without thinking about how to create it. So Canaan is a knowledge economy. So on the first ladder of that is knowledge. No nation grow more than the skill knowledge that we have. And one of the ways to eradicate poverty is human capital development. And one of the reasons why Nigeria product don't cross our border except crude oil is because the products we have don't have global competitiveness. And one of the reasons why that happened is because in literature they said the economic complexity of your production process is very important. And that means that the production process that drives the product that we have determines the kind of product we have. The phone you carry go through a very complex process and knowledge is involved. Whether it is technology, whatever thing you want to produce, knowledge is involved. So the first ladder is knowledge. The second is power. When you have knowledge, you have power. But when you have power, that is when you are going to have wealth. Now for Nigeria, it's on the other way around. It's opposite. We have wealth. We use wealth to grab power. Knowledge is out of the roof. And so where is the wealth coming from? My question about that is the wealth is coming from meeting with people, getting access to resources that we have not produced. And because we have access to these resources that we have not produced, we create wealth for ourselves without a source base, which is the knowledge, and then grab power. And that's how we have state capture. And when there is state capture, the political process will have the kind of political process that we have. And when there is state capture, poverty will be on the increase. When there is state capture, unemployment will be on the increase. So for me, human capital is critical. And that is why recently I was in a meeting in Abuja for National Development Plan. One of the things I queried was this. Post-COVID has come. When COVID came, we were having an educational system that could not, contend with global reality, which is that all schools must go online. And thank God for ASU strike. Even if there will be no ASU strike, it will be extremely difficult for our public universities to go online. It will be extremely difficult. ASU strike just help us to cover our shame. Now, post-COVID has come, and they were drafting a document for national development, and I asked them, I said, as of today, if something like COVID comes, they say, God forbid. I said, that's why we stay on the side of prayer. We're not saying God will, but if it comes now, can our primary, secondary universities be able to go online? No. Prof, thank you, sir. Let me stop there.
Let's put your hands together for Prof. That is why this man is a teacher. He dissected the issues.
1960, 1963. Post-1963, the constitutions we have, they are military-oriented drafting processes, right? So we need that constitution. That's why today we are still struggling with what to do with our constitution and all of that. So we need that rule of law that will make that happen. My third point is that we need what I call structural planning. And what do I mean? Currently what we do in Nigeria is what I call functional planning. Planning on existing structures that have not taken us anywhere. Structural planning is that you go back to the base and see that things are not working, and then have a radical reform to take off from there, right? So that's my third recommendation. My fourth recommendation will be on human capital. Human capital development is very, very critical, and I think I've talked about the fact that knowledge is what drives power to wealth and what you think about. And that brings me to our point. I know that one of the major problems we have today is dealing with our higher institutions. For me, as an economist, I believe that higher institution at that level is what I call it a luxury, and it should be paid for. And therefore, those who provide productivity in driving that must be paid a corresponding amount for the productivity they are giving. And that can only happen if we have a system that is self-driven. And the only way that can happen, one of the things I think in most fora I've recommended is what we call, let's have an education bank, for instance. And it's very critical. So we need an education bank for that to happen. We have several banks, infrastructure, agri. Education is critical, health is critical, but we don't have a bank around that. So those who don't have that, they can have access to loan. And we have a BVN today that can keep track of whoever it is, right? And then the system and the public institution can also have access to that loan to drive infrastructure that is needed for the kind of education we are thinking, right? So my final point is that we need meritocracy. For whatever appointment we are going to do, we must ensure that merit is given the first point. I don't care the political affiliation, until merit is given its place, Nigeria will head nowhere. My fifth or sixth point has to do with that we need pragmatism. It's not everything that works in the US that works for us. Like you said, colonization is the major problem we have. We have seen cases where even the National Assembly, where they want to draft documents and then get a Singapore document and then panel. That's not what we need. And that's why data is very important. We must know our own issues, behavioral issues and problems we face, and then come up with pragmatic ways and policies to drive them. Last one is what I call honesty. There's so many people in leadership without integrity, and that's why we have a lot of problems today. We need honesty to drive Nigeria. Thank you.